Hey, this is Tracy Lewis from Stuff and Things. I have been working on my thank you cards that I send out to customers, both my regular customers as well as Paper Pumpkin customers. And I pulled three in three different styles of coloring. I love to color, and I find it really hard to be really consistent, so I tend to change up my coloring. Even if I use the same colors, I'll just try some different techniques. So I ended up with three distinct coloring styles of cards using the Celebrate Sunflowers stamps. And I used the Daffodil Delight Light and Dark, Crumb Cake Light and Dark, Old Olive Light and Dark, and to get into the deeper colors, I used the Soft Suede Light and Dark. And on one of them, which I will show you later, I used the Color Lifter, doing a special technique that I really like. The other piece that I used for all three was a mask for the large flower, which allowed me to stamp the smaller flowers to appear like they are behind the big flowers. And that's pretty much it. And this particular one, the first one that I'm going to show you, was pretty fast. I did very light flicking and didn't spend a lot of time, didn't make sure I filled in all the way to the edge, left some white for my highlights. And this is what I would call like a beginner colorist style of coloring. I personally want my pens to last a long time, so I tend to go very light on my colors. I mean, we're talking just feather flicks is all I used on this, and it took me maybe 10 minutes to do. What I haven't done on any of these is a treatment that I like to do, and I think I'm going to not even put them on because I have too many cards, and that is white gel pen dots. I do love to do, but for this particular set of cards, I'm not going to do that. The second one, I added a little more detail. I didn't go quite as dark. I actually started this with crumb cake. So this one was done with early espresso, and this one was done with crumb cake. So they have a different look to them. The one on the left to me is much softer. I went ahead and used the light crumb cake in the petals to add some depth, and I did very light dotting around the perimeter. And the edging that I do, which the trick with the edging is to hide any of your mistakes. If you go over with the yellow on any of or the green, when you edge, you hide that. So this is a technique that I like to do because I like how it looks, and I'm not necessarily doing it to hide any errors that I've made. The way you do it is I start with the lightest, and I go too deep on the light. Then I grab my darker, and in this case I just went with crumb cake. I use the bullet nib, and I go very faintly in, and then I come back with the light and do a little bit of a blend out, and so I end up with 3 levels of color out. And then I just finish off by dotting, adding random dots for just a nice whimsical look. So that's the second one. And then the third one is what I would call a more avid coloring type of coloring, and it took me way longer. I went in, I did leave some whites in the middles of the sunflower seed part, and I did a lot of stippling, many layers of stippling in 3 different colors. I actually used the light and dark crumb cake, light and dark soft suede on this one, and I went way dark in the edges. And for the shadows in the big flower, even on the little flowers, I went to the dark crumb cake. So my shadows went deeper. If I compare the crumb cake version, I did only the light crumb cake in the petals, and in this case I did light and dark crumb cake in the petals. Then there's a trick. I with this stippling, you take the note color lifter. I'm going to see if I can do this really close to the monitor so you can see. To have the stippling look a little more natural as you go into the darker colors, the color lifter is really technically a color pusher. It pushes the color out through the back. So if you just dot, which I've done a whole bunch of dots, I'm going to do a dot and hold and then lift, and you can see, oops, sorry, you can't see. So right here, I dotted and held. I'm going to do one more since I have it there. And then you get a lighter with a darker ring around it, and I really like the effect of this particular technique to make a nice whimsical coloring. It works really well. Like when I do my coloring pages that are 8.5 by 11 or bigger, I definitely do this stippling, and for most of my stamping for cards, I don't bother with the stippling, but this large sunflower looked like it could handle the extra depth and the extra time. So I really like large stamps. I don't often spend time with the large stamps. The other trick I will tell you is, you're welcome to try it, but I used my special alcohol marker paper. It's Nina Cover Copy. I actually have two. I have a really expensive called Express It, which is made by the Copic people, and that is a grayish colored paper, so it doesn't go well with stamping for card crafting at all because the color is so off from all of the other materials in the Whisper White. Whereas the Nina is a nice, it's a nice compatible with the Whisper White, and it holds the color a little better, and you can get the Nina in the 110 pound, which I have the 110 and the 80 pound, and that way I can color more. If I were to try to do this much coloring on Whisper White, it would start to bleed, and the paper actually, it has a really slick surface, and so it would actually fray on top. So if you want to experiment with it, just be aware that if you want to do a lot of in-depth coloring, to go with the Whisper White thick as a preference, and be prepared to have to be a little bit careful with your coloring. When I colored this on the Nina, I can be really rough with it. I don't have to be careful with it at all. Anyhow, I just wanted to do a quick demo, and I will go ahead and post the pictures of these at the end of the video, as well as on my blog with all of the materials that I used. And I really do, I will say, I have now used these blends and Copics together for over 2 years, and I think that the blends do a really nice job, very equitable to the Copics, and they've lasted forever. I've had the only color, so here's a bunch of colors. I even had some oranges out that I never used, and there's only one color in this bunch that I'm starting to have a problem with, and that is light olive. I use it all the time, and the tip is getting frayed, as you can see, so I have to be really careful now when I don't know if I can get it to show unless I have it on black. Let's see if that shows it. See, there you go. You can see the fraying going on. So I will be reordering one of these, and I have used this pen for just a ton of coloring in the last 2 years. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below or leave them on my website. I love to communicate with everybody, and I know that a lot of times when I have this kind of a how-to and I don't actually sit and do it, there's lots of questions on how I did it. So hopefully this gets you started to experimenting with those techniques that I showed. And thanks for watching.